Hey guys, in this lesson, we're going to look at midpoint on the coordinate grid. So this time, instead of just talking about the number line, remember the coordinate grid is basically just where two number lines intersect and then they make a grid. Okay, so just extending those number lines out. So we can find two coordinates. So this time we'll have a vertical coordinate and a horizontal coordinate. So for the key points here, we're going to use that midpoint formula and to find the midpoint between 2 points. And we're also going to use the midpoint formula to be able to find an endpoint given the midpoint and one of the other endpoints. Okay, so it's going to be that one that's like halfway in between. So you will learn about fractional distance on the coordinate plane, but now we're just looking at just midpoint here. So let's take a look. In example 1, it says if point A is located at -6, -3, and point B is located at 4, 1, what's the location of the midpoint? So I like to have kind of a good idea of where these two things are going to be at, okay? So I have -6, -3, so somewhere in here is going to be A, and then B is going to be located at 4, 1, somewhere over here. Okay, so I can venture to guess that my midpoint halfway in between is going to be probably in this area right here. So I'm going to probably have a positive x, and I might have either 0 or a little small y, or maybe a small negative y. So somewhere in there. Okay, so I'm going to use the midpoint formula that we see located right up here. All right, so I'm going to do the midpoint formula twice. I'm going to do it for the horizontal distance. I'm going to find the midpoint there. And then for the vertical distance, I'm going to find the midpoint there. So I'm going to use my two x's. So the midpoint, I have this 2 times. So I'm going to find x1, I'm going to say is -6. X2, I'm going to say is 4. So notice that both of these are my x variables right here and right here. Then divide by 2. Okay, so that's going to be the first thing. That's going to be my x coordinate. And I'm going to use this comma. So then I'm going to have to do a separate problem. So I see a lot of students try to put this all in at one time, and you can't because the comma doesn't mean anything. All right, so you have to find the x coordinate first, so the horizontal distance, and then you need to find the y coordinate second. So I'm going to take the two y coordinates. I'm going to use a different color here, and I'm going to start with -3 and then +1 divided by 2. So that's going to give me my midpoint. So I'm going to do first the x coordinate. So that's going to give me a -2 over 2. That gives me the x coordinate. And then the y coordinate is going to be -3 plus 1, which is -2 over 2 as well. So you'll notice I did that in both places there. So then I end up with a midpoint as -1, -1. So -1, -1. Ooh, so it's right in there. So I was a little bit off on the midpoint, but I knew that I didn't end up with a point up here. I didn't end up with the end point right here, and I didn't end up with a midpoint, way back here, still on the same line, but back further. Okay, so it's between A and B. So keep that in mind when you're looking at midpoint. It has to be between those two values there. Okay. All right, so now we're going to find the midpoints for J and K. So what makes this challenging is that I am going to have to name the points for J and K, X, comma, Y. All right, so you go over, then up or down, as opposed to slope. Okay, so that might give you some problems if you don't remember which one is which. So J is at -2 because I moved to the left 2 and down 4. So -2, -4. And then K is going to be at 5, 2. Okay, so now I'm going to find the midpoint. So remember, the midpoint is probably, I'm going to go ahead and connect these two. I'm going to venture to guess it's going to be somewhere in here. Okay, I'm broadening my range since I was wrong last time. Okay, so let's look here. So my midpoint formula says that I am going to take my two x values, which are here and here, and I'm going to add them together. So I'm going to take negative 2 plus 5 and divide it by 2. And then I'm going to take my two y values, which are, let's see, here and here. So I'm going to get negative 4 plus 2 divided by 2. Okay. Now, it does not matter the order this time, but you want to keep track of which point you're using first and which point you're using second, because fractional distance, it will matter. This is a good idea. All right. So now I can do this. I do this two separate times. Negative 2 plus 5 makes a positive 3 divided by 2. And then negative 4 plus 2 gives me negative 2 divided by 2. So that gives me 1.5 and negative 1. So 1.5, negative 1 is going to be about right here. So I'll write this down, within my range. All right, so now let's look at example 3. This one is a little bit tricky because point H is the midpoint of GJ for that segment. If point H is located at negative 1, 2, what is the point for J? I'm going to show you graphically second, but I'm going to show you algebraically first, so you can kind of decide on which one you'd rather do. So I know H is at negative 1, 2. That's H. It's the midpoint, okay? And G is at negative 5, 0. All right. And I know the midpoint. I'm trying to find the other endpoint. All right. So for the x variable, okay, I am going to take the endpoint, which is G. Okay. So I don't know what the other J is. So I'm going to use capital J, lowercase x. It's called a subscript. So I'm going to have the Gx value, which is negative 5, plus, I don't know the endpoint for J, okay, divided by 2. However, I do know the midpoint, the x value for H. H is at negative 1. So here's my midpoint x. And then this is my Gx. And then this is my Jx. And I don't know it. So now I'm going to solve for it. Remember, anytime you're dividing by something, you can multiply to get rid of it. All right? So I'm going to multiply to get rid of the 2. That goes away. Bye. See you 2. So now I have negative 2 is equal to negative 5 plus x sub j. If you want to use that, you can. Or you can kind of drop that now. And then I'll add 5 to both sides. And so 3 is equal to my x coordinate for j. All right. So j is going to be located at 3, comma. Now I need to find the y value. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to use the y coordinates this time. All right, so I know that the midpoint y value is 2. And then that's going to be equal to G, y value, which is 0. That's really nice to use 0. Plus y sub j. So the y value for j, the y coordinate, divided by 2. Remember, anytime I'm dividing, I can multiply to get rid of it. We'll multiply by 2 on each side. 4 is equal to 0 plus y sub j, or again, you can drop that at that point. And then 4 is equal to the y variable. The y coordinate. So therefore, I have 3, comma, 4. And this is the point for j. So it's going to be right there. That's how you figure it out algebraically. Now, graphically, here's what we can do. So it's not always, it may not always work out to be nice and pretty like this, because you might have a decimal, or you might have something else that you are can't really graph very well. So especially if you have like really large numbers. So you need to know the algebraic part. But let's look at this graphically. Remember, H is the midpoint. So to go from go from G to H, okay, I am going to go up 2 and right 4. Guess what I can do from H to J? Up 2, right 4. Boom, gets me there. Okay, so it works on the graph. So if this is like kind of all else fails, then you can use that. But you can also use the algebraic approach as well if that's what you would rather do. So it's kind of up to you on how you want to make that work out. You can get the answer. You can get the correct answer by doing either the algebraic approach or the graphic approach. So now it is your turn. I would highly encourage you to practice or try this challenge problem because it's kind of fun. You can use the numbers 0 through 9. You can't repeat any numbers. And you're trying to fill this in for the midpoint equation to make the x coordinate of the midpoint be 3 for sure. And then the y coordinate be something that you haven't already used in a different piece there. So I hope you attempt this problem because I think it's kind of fun. But if you are ready, you can start your skill check, or you can practice with quizzes or book it.